Hello. So today we are discussing about complications of fractures. Introduction. So what do you mean by complications of fractures? These are the associated pathologies other than the loss of bone continuity which either coexist or originate due to the fracture. Early diagnosis and aggressive treatment is necessary to minimize the disabilities. Classification is immediate, in which systemic and local are subdivided. In systemic complications, we have hypovolemic shock. In local, it may be related to the injury to major vessels, muscles and tendons, joints, or the viscera. In early complications, systemic complications include hypovolemic shock, ARDS, fat embolism, DVT and pulmonary embolism, aseptic traumatic fever, septicemia, crush syndrome. Early local complications include infection and compartment syndrome. Late complications are related to the imperfect union, which may be a delayed union, it might be a non-union, malunion or cross union. Other complications also include avascular necrosis, shortening of the limb, joint stiffness, Sudeck's dystrophy, osteomyelitis, ischemic contracture, myositis ossificans, osteoarthritis. So we will discuss one by one each and every complication. First one is the hypovolemic shock. So commonest cause of death in fractures of major bones like pelvis or femur is hypovolemic shock. Cause is either internal or external hemorrhage. External hemorrhage may be seen in compound fractures injuring major vessels of the limb. Internal injury to the body cavities such as chest or pelvis. Internal is more difficult to diagnose. In fracture pelvis, there would be around 1.5 to 2 liters of blood loss, whereas in fracture femur, it is 1 to 1.5 liters of blood loss, and it produces major hemorrhage and hypovolemic shock. So prevention. How you can prevent hypovolemic shock is early stoppage of bleeding, avoiding shifting of the patients. For fracture pelvis, temporary stabilization with external fixator or any compressive cloth can be done. Emergency angiography and embolization of bleeding vessels for deeper vessels is to be done. Management. So how you will manage this? Management starts with even before the cause is established. Two large bore IV cannulas are to be put. IV access is to be established. We have to infuse 200 ml of crystalloids, which is ringer lactate, followed by colloid, which is hemacil, and blood if needed. Cut down if peripheral vasoconstriction is present. Localize the site of lesion, and if in body cavities, perform chest aspiration or diagnostic peritoneal lavage. Sometimes an simple X-ray is enough. In chest bleeding, you have to put a ICD tube. In abdominal bleeding, emergency laparotomy has to be done. Next complication is ARDS, which is the respiratory distress following trauma. The cause is not definite. It is hypothesized to be by the release of inflammatory cells and proteinaceous fluid that accumulates in alveolar spaces, leading to decrease in diffusing capacity and hypoxemia. The microvasculature is disrupted. Onset is usually 24 hours after the injury. The clinical features seen are tachypnea, labored breathing. X-ray would show diffuse pulmonary infiltrates. Arterial PO2 is below 50. Management would be 100% oxygen and assisted ventilation. It may take up to 7 days to get the chest clear. If not detected early, death occurs by multi-organ failure or cardiorespiratory failure. Third complication which is commonly encountered is fat embolism. It is a life-threatening complication of fracture where fat globules occlude the small blood vessels, and this emboli is the process of occlusion of blood vessel by any material which is brought to the site from elsewhere by bloodstream. So in this case it is fat. Pathogenesis is Whenever there is an injury to the large bones, such as femur, it releases fat globules present in the marrow to bloodstream. Alternatively, fat can also be released from the adipose tissue. The fat globules obstruct the capillary vasculature of the lungs. Also, fat is converted into free fatty acid, which induces toxic vasculitis followed by thrombosis, which obstructs the microvasculature. Clinical features would include a petechial rash on the anterior neck, anterior axillary fold, or conjunctiva. It also has two types. One is cerebral type and one is pulmonary type. In pulmonary type, you would get tachypnea, tachycardia, and respiratory failure, whereas in cerebral type, it is drowsiness, restlessness, disorientation, and coma. Diagnosis is usually by urine fat globules. We also see retinal artery emboli. On chest X-ray, we see pulmonary infiltration or snowstorm appearance. Management would be respiratory support, heparinization for the embolus, and IV low molecular weight dextran. Corticosteroid is also given, and dextrose with alcohol infusion to emulsify the fat. Next complication is the deep vein thrombosis. It is a common complication originating from altered hemodynamics in the lower limb and spinal injuries. So, Virchow's triad. First is decreased flow rate of the blood, which causes damage to the blood vessel wall and hypercoagulability. So, hypercoagulability would also lead to deep vein thrombosis. So, because of trauma, there would be immobilization, there would be venous stasis, and then thrombosis. Clinical features would include, first of all, there would be local redness, warmth, and calf tenderness. Pain on passive dorsiflexion, which is called as Homan sign, is positive. Usually patients are obese and elderly, and venography would show DVT. So sequelae of this venous thrombosis is it can dislodge the venous thrombus and produce embolism elsewhere. If it is pulmonary embolism, then the condition is life-threatening. Embolism usually occurs within 4 to 5 days after injury. A late complication of DVT is post-phlebitic syndrome, which can manifest as edema, pain, or discomfort, and skin problems. Other causes would be compression of the veins. So veins can be compressed by physical trauma, by some other causes which are as cancer, infection, inflammatory diseases. These doesn't come under orthopedic causes, so we are just ignoring the pathophysiology about it. But the risk factor would be surgery, hospitalization, immobilization, orthopedic casts, obesity, and smoking, or many drugs such as estrogen or erythropoietin may also cause thrombophilia. Pregnancy is also one known cause, and postnatal period. Diagnosis would be by D-dimer assay. We also do the Doppler ultrasound, we do the venography, and through the clinical features. Treatment. So treatment would be prophylaxis. We can use active or passive calf pumps and toe movements, elevation of the limb, deep breathing exercises, elastic TED stockings, early internal fixation to provide early mobility of the fracture. Management would be complete bed rest with elevation and thrombolysis, anticoagulation therapy, graduated compression stockings, thromboembolic deterrent stockings, or intermittent pneumatic compression devices. Respiratory support in case of pulmonary embolism is required, which needs hospitalization. Then we come for the next complication, which is a crush syndrome. Crush syndrome is a renal failure following extensive crushing injury of muscles. So what happens is crushing of muscles causes release of myoglobin into the circulation. Myoglobin precipitates in renal tubules causing acute tubular necrosis, metabolic acidosis, and hyperkalemia. So clinical features, they appear within 2 to 3 days of injury. Signs of deficient renal function are seen, such as oliguria, which is scanty urine, apathy, restlessness, delirium, cardiac arrhythmia and failure. Patient may also present with hypothermia and shock. Treatment would be prophylaxis, application of tourniquet and gradual release to slowly allow myoglobin to reach the kidneys. Treatment would be as treated as acute renal failure. Compartment syndrome. So what do you mean by compartment syndrome? An increased pressure within enclosed osteophyseal space that reduces capillary perfusion below necessary for tissue viability. The underlying mechanism is increased volume within space, decreased space for contents, combination of both. Etiology includes trauma with bleeding or swelling, bleeding disorders, burns, tight wraps, traction, surgical positioning, pneumatic anti-shock garment, reperfusion swelling, casting and wraps. So increased compartment pressure leads to an increased venous pressure, which decreases the arteriovenous gradient, resulting in muscle and nerve ischemia. So most common compartments which encounter compartment syndrome is the fora and the leg. Other compartments which are rarely seen are hand, finger, gluteal compartment, thigh compartment or foot. Diagnosis is by history. Always remember the P's. 5 P's. Compartment pressure are to be measured. Laboratory tests include CPK and urine myoglobin. So 6 P's. There would be pressure, palpation of compartment and its tension or firmness, the pain which is exaggerated with passive stretch of the involved muscles in the compartment. It is an earliest symptom but inconsistent. You may also encounter paresthesia. The peripheral nerve tissue is more sensitive than the muscle to go to the ischemia. So it will progress to anesthesia if pressure is not relieved. Paralysis is a late finding. We also have pulselessness and pallor. So these 6 P's are present, then you know clinically that this is a compartment syndrome and it is an emergency. Treatment would be lower the leg to the level of the heart. Remove the cast, split all the dressings down to the skin, fasciotomy if continued clinical findings or elevated compartment pressure. So here are the different incisions which require fasciotomy and release of the compartments. Similarly, in the leg we have different muscle compartments for which we have to take different incisions. Moving ahead with the other complications. These are the late complications which include delayed or non-union. So when a fracture takes more than the usual time to unite, it is said to have gone in delayed union. When the process of healing stops before the completion of the fracture healing, it is said to have gone into non-union. To diagnose non-union, fracture has to be minimum 6 months old. So causes would be related to the patient, which is most commonly seen in old age or any associated systemic diseases or illness such as malignancy. Second is related to the fracture. The distraction at the fracture site because of muscle pulling the fragments like fracture patella. It might be because of the gravity which is in the shaft of humerus fracture. It might be soft tissue interposition, again shaft of humerus fracture. Bone loss during fracture, an open fracture of tibia. Infection from open fracture such as fracture tibia. Damage to the blood supply of the fragment. Example is fracture scaphoid. And pathological fracture because of osteomyelitis seen in tibia fractures. Third is the causes related to the treatment. So iatrogenic, that is surgeon related. Inadequate reduction, fracture shaft of long bones, inadequate immobilization, which is fracture shaft of long bones again, distraction or during treatment excessive distraction, which is seen in fracture shaft of femur. So what types of non-union? Major types of non-union are atrophic and hypertrophic. So atrophic non-union is no or minimal callus formation. Hypertrophic, there is a callus formation present, but it does not breach the fracture site. So most common sites for non-union are neck of femur, fracture scaphoid waist, lower third of tibia, lower third of ulna, lateral condyle of humerus. Clinical features of non-union include pain, deformity, abnormal mobility, refracture. Radiological findings in delayed union would be inadequate callus, visible fracture line. In non-union, you see the ends of the fracture are rounded, smooth and sclerotic. Medullary cavity may be obliterated and there may be a visible fracture line. Treatment for delayed union is mostly prolonged conservative management. Surgical intervention includes bone grafting with or without internal fixation. For non-union, it depends upon the site and resulting disability. Following are the options. The commonest option is the bone grafting. Excision of fragments. When it can be done with minimal loss of function, we have to excise the fragments. A prosthesis may be put to replace the lost part, such as in fractured neck of femur, the head can be replaced with the bipolar prosthesis. We can also use Elizarum method. If there is no disability, then we may get away with the non-union, which is rarely seen. Malunion. So when a fracture does not unite in proper position, it is said to be have malunited. Causes would be improper reduction, unchecked muscle pull, and excessive communication. Comminution. So consequences of this would be deformity, shortening of the limb, limitation of movements. Treatment for this would be osteoclasis. We make a refracture and then, which is usually done in children to correct mild to moderate angular deformities under anesthesia. Redoing the fracture surgically, it is most common. Open reduction internal fixation is generally done along with bone grafting. We also do corrective osteotomy. It is performed at a site away from the fracture, which is generally a case in supracondylar fracture of humerus. And then we also excise the protruding bone. So no treatment may be necessary if remodeling occurs, such as in children. So this ends our lecture. Thank you.